Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from TV Detective Fan. And TV Detective Fan tells us that he has recently encountered the idea that ancestral wrongdoing can affect the current generation. And he asks if I feel there is anything to this idea, and if so, would resolving it be as simple as working with one's ancestors to find out what happened and what can be done? And my answer to this is that this is actually a somewhat more complex question than it may first appear to be. And that complexity resides in our definitions of terms such as ancestral wrongdoing. If we take it at face value, then I would say, no, I don't think there is anything to it, and I'll tell you why. As a student of history, this is not what I see. As a student of history, what I see is that the descendants of people who do great evil often simply get richer one generation after another and continue doing great evil. And I think there are an awful lot of examples of this that you can very easily see for yourself in a very simple study of history or the present day. So in that sense, in the moralistic pie-in-the-sky sense, no, I don't think that the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons, so to speak. I think that actually, if anything, it's rather the opposite. Having said that, however, if we look at the definition in a different way, the answer becomes different. I'm very much a believer in the idea that the race is run by 1 and 1, never by 2 and 2, meaning that we carry our own karma, not everybody else's. However, having said that, we've been talking about the idea of egregores for several vlogs now, and we actually have a backlog of egregore questions coming up next week, but I thought we would take a break today, but I guess not really, because in a sense, many families can be said to have a kind of egregore, a kind of group spirit that influences what happens within that family. And although I would not consider that to be exactly individual karma, I do think that certain issues can be passed down from one generation to another without conscious knowledge in an energetic sense. You might say in a karmic sense, or you might not. That again comes back to our definitions. But I do think that there are certain families where you see the same patterns working out generation after generation. And in that sense, we might say that ancestral actions get passed down through generations in certain circumstances. I don't think that this is every family by any means, but I think that you do see it in some families that have a particularly strong sense of themselves. I think that you sometimes do see this kind of repeating pattern. And I don't think it has anything to do with ancestral wrongdoing so much as strong ancestral patterns, and it can be either good or bad, depending on, well, your definitions of that as well. So I do think that in certain families you will see the actions of previous generations strongly affecting the present. But I don't think it's in any sort of judgmental way, but rather through attachment, through karma, for want of a better way to put it. Although it's a little different than individual karma, it has more to do with what lodges in that egregore, so to speak. And sometimes this is a very major influence, most often it's not, but it depends on the family. And how would you deal with this? Well, I think that TV Detective Fan is right on target in saying you would work with your ancestors. You would look for the origins of those patterns if you wish to change them, and see how they could be best addressed through working with your ancestors. And this is something that I have done on occasion in working with the Correllian ancestors, and I've known other people to work with their ancestors towards addressing certain patterns that come down in families. And I think it can be very successful. You could use any number of healing tools in doing this. Any kind of shadow work could be helpful, depending, of course, on the kind of pattern that you're trying to address. But I think that if we try to look at it as ancestral wrongdoing affecting later generations, that we're lying to ourselves, that it is a very satisfying little picture to think, well, that'll catch up with them in a few generations. If you look at history, it's not what you see. But you do sometimes see patterns. Again, they can be either good or bad. And if they're good, then you want to work to strengthen them. And if they're limiting in some way, then you want to work to change them. And again, sometimes in certain families, this can be a strong influence. In others, you'll never notice this influence at all. And it can be very individual in that sense. And also in terms of who within the family is affected. And sometimes also we are reborn into the same family, in which case it isn't necessarily a familial pattern, but individual karma at play because the same souls have returned. So these are various different aspects that come into consideration of this question, which is why I say it's not such a simple question as it may appear. There are many different variables that can affect it, but can ancestral patterns sometimes influence the current generation? Well, yes, sometimes they can. So I hope you find that interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from witchschool.com. Are you looking for the best in pagan and magical education? With more than 12,000 pages, witchschool.com is like having your own personal library with individual learning assistants to help you study. And Witchschool's Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere education system is available any place on Earth, anywhere you are and anytime you want it, as long as you have an internet connection. Witchschool's lifetime memberships are a great value. They really do last a lifetime. They've been there for years and they'll be there for years to come. So get your membership today at witchschool.com.